I'd like to welcome Don McCree, Citizens Financial, and also George Patterson from PGIM Quantitative Solutions. First thing I want to do is kind of set the table for everyone here and give them an idea of how you're involved in the latest technology, what you're doing. Don, you had said, we spoke earlier, that leveraging technology has been this multi-year modernization. I mean, from everything from customer call centers, migrating to the cloud. So just kind of set the table and break it down.
Just by way of background, we IPO'd Citizens Bank 10 years ago. And before that, we were owned by a bankrupt British bank, Royal Bank of Scotland. So it wasn't a go-go investment period for the 8 years before the IPO. So when we inherited the company, we had an enormous amount of work to do on our technology stack. And it was really, there was a couple big themes. One is we were almost 100% outsourced with vendors, and we didn't have the engineering talent that we thought we needed to service our customers the correct way. Number two, we were unstable, and we had a lot of work to do to increase the stability of the company. And we've been on a multi-year journey, really, and it has kind of three different components to it. First was moving from that outsourced environment into an engineering environment, and we probably went from a handful of engineers, and what they really did was manage vendors, to hundreds and hundreds of internal engineers that are actually building applications for us now. The second thing is we reorganized the entire technology delivery around agile ways of working, which means we put our technologists and teams together with product specialists, together with marketing specialists, and surrounded everything we do in technology around customer journeys and customer delivery, and did it on a totally integrated basis. And we kind of, instead of the way banks usually would do this, was we go approve a business plan. We take months and months and months to deliver the business plan. Probably doesn't work. You have to go back to the drawing board, and it's a really incremental delivery. This is a persistent investment in our technology and our customer. And so think about a mobile app. We release them now, every 3 weeks, and we update them, and those technology teams are doing that. And the last piece, which we're almost finished with, is we're migrating basically all of our applications into the cloud. And so we will be done with 70% of the company by year-end 24. We'll be done with the entire application migration by year-end 25. And what that allows us to do is deliver faster, have more stability in the infrastructure, and adjust the ways we do business internally. So it's a lot going on.
An ongoing process, it seems like, continuing the journey. Now, George, PGIM on the investment side, explain what kind of technology you're using, but also explain the thought process behind it and how you decided to go in that direction.
So my firm is a little bit more quantitative in terms of that. So we're typically called a quant in the investment firm, in the investment world, where we build models, and the models largely determine what we're buying and selling. So it is, we don't have traditional fundamental analysts. So that piece of software is really our intellectual property. That's something that we need to develop and own in-house. However, there's many other areas of support functions that we've decided to use external solutions, mostly just because it's really not part of our core value proposition. We are always focused on what do clients want from us? What do we deliver to clients? And if it's part of that core value proposition, we're going to do it in-house. If it's not, we're going to evaluate whether we want to do it in-house. But a lot of times, I think it's very difficult to kind of get the buy versus build calculation right, because when you build something, you're not thinking as much about upgrades. You're not thinking about documentation. You're not thinking about changes in the developer pool. When you buy something or license something, you're getting upgrade. You're getting future upgrades. You're getting documentation. You could hire people that know how to use that system. So you have to think about the total cost of ownership, as opposed to, oh, my guys can write something fast today and solve this in the near term. You kind of have to think about the longer term opportunity.
Yeah, and you touched upon that, the build versus buy. So go a little bit deeper into how you decide when, because you mentioned the engineers that you have in-house.
So we look, and I don't want to give the impression that we don't use partners. We use partners all the time, but we've gone from big platform partners by and large to specialty delivery partners. And one of the big things that we're doing in the company is really upgrading our payments business. And you've heard about embedded finance, which is a big new trend in the payments business, which is, you take a customer's receivables and payables and you embed services into them, say payroll or kind of working capital management, and that we will use partners to actually deliver those services because, to your point, they get upgraded constantly, and you need to keep current on that. So every single thing we do, we look at building it ourselves, buying it from somebody, or partnering with somebody. So we'll also, one of the interesting things that we've done over the last 3 years is we bought a very big technology investment bank out in Silicon Valley. And we're using that investment bank in their research, and a lot of what they do is very, very early stage tech. There used to be a lot of venture. That's obviously not going that well right now, but they're still following all sorts of early stage innovative tech companies, and we're working with them to identify new companies that have unique services that we may want to go and invest in or partner in very early on so that we can influence the outcome of what that company is building and think about how we add it into our service bundle. And it's all, I go back to the agile way of working. Everything we do is centered around a client need. You know, what do we think a client need might be, and what is a service that we want to deliver, and then we go figure out the best way to execute that against, and so we can deliver it as cheaply as possible and as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think you make it a good point there. As far as advice, you know, for anyone out there who's looking to start this out, think about what your priorities are.
Yes.
You know, what other advice do you have for people who are saying, you know what, I want to jump on this train and get started?
I think it's customer. I mean, you know, banks have traditionally been notorious about not thinking about customers and trying to build products and sell them.
Yeah.
So we're trying to turn the whole thing on its head and say, you know, let's talk to our companies about what they need. And interestingly, it's increasingly moving into non-financial areas. So think about ESG or think about cyber management. We do that as a company really well. So we'll run service programs for our middle market companies in particular. A couple of people made the comment on small companies just don't have the resources to do this themselves. Okay. So we're trying to actually kind of spend our time with our banking teams to say you've got to really deeply understand the pain points that your clients have, and then we have to go manufacturing solutions to actually deal with those pain points.
Now, George, are you surprised at how much older technology is out there now?
It's out there, yeah. And typically, you'll talk to someone who'll say, "Oh yes, we can do that for you," or "We'd love to partner with you," or this or that, and we say, "Great, here's what we're looking for. Here's our use case," and they'll say, "Yeah, well, that's not quite exactly. We're not quite there yet in terms of delivering it." So there is a lot of legacy technology that's out there. You know, virtually every firm has it. I think it's a question of, you know, acknowledging and engaging in a program of trying to modernize it.
And of course, making change, it's not always easy. There are certain headwinds you face, certain challenges. What are some of the challenges that Citizens Financial has gone through?
Oh, there's never a problem.
What?
Everything works perfectly. I'd say the thing we spend the most time is, there's two things. One, making sure in the planning stages and the development stages that we're very complete around, you know, the entire kind of architecture of any build that we're doing. And a lot of times what used to happen, and I've been doing this for 41 years, what used to happen is you build like 3/4 of something, and then all of a sudden you wake up at the end of the project and it's like, well, that actually doesn't work. So you go back to the drawing board and have to reinvest in it. So really good kind of planning with, as I said, organized teams with all the right people in the room. So everybody is lined up. And so if you think about us delivering a technology, we'll need a product specialist, and then we'll need someone from cyber, and we'll need someone from infrastructure. We'll need, and not having them all together, kind of figuring out the path we're going to go down is one challenge, which I think we've cracked the code on. And then the other thing we spent an enormous amount of time on is migrations. So once you actually build a platform, you've got to migrate your clients, and you need that to be as seamless and as painless as possible. And there's been notorious, you know, I hear from all my clients when they migrate onto a new ERP system or something, oh my God, we just lost a quarter. And so we spend a lot of time hand-holding customers as we migrate them onto new platforms.
Continuing testing and testing.
Yeah, data migration is one of the things that people, they never factor into their plans. It's just, you know, it's kind of the ugly stepchild, right, or the redhead stepchild that they think, oh yeah, this will all go fine. Data migration is just where companies burn hours and hours and huge amounts of dollars to get it right.
And what are some of those headwinds that you have faced? I mean, if you could do something different that you didn't know before, what would that be?
So one thing I think about a lot of times is when you're getting involved with a partner, you have to think about, okay, what's the average piece of software lasts maybe 7 years, or the average relationship may last kind of 5 to 7 years. What does that next step look like? So when you're getting a contract in place, what does it look like if you need to migrate to someone else? Sometimes that company that you're partnering with may be acquired. And they may no longer be the right partner for your organization anymore. They may be acquired by a competitor. So there's a lot of things that you have to kind of do a little contingency planning and thinking about, okay, how does this go wrong? And how stuck am I in this contract? Do I have ways of getting out? Do I also have, limits on price increases? I mean, everyone's, like inevitably, the team that manages contract is always coming to me and say, so-and-so is raising their prices. So-and-so is raising their prices on data. And, it's something that, now increasingly when we're doing a lot of relationships, we're actually establishing, okay, what are long-term expectations? We need to have some assurances that, we're not going to be held hostage for, 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road.
Now, on the flip side, George, when we had spoken earlier, you talked about how it's helping bring different businesses together, whether it's equity, fixed income. So dig a little into that.
Yeah, so PGIM is a very much of a boutique model where each business does what is in the interest of that particular business. So whether equities focuses on equity and uses whatever systems that are most relevant for our clients. The same thing is true with fixed income. Historically, that has led to different systems across the organization. But what we're now seeing is like having, recent technology migrations have provided a bit more of a backbone, and that allows us to work much more efficiently across the organization. So I think in the early days, people didn't appreciate that you need to, it's no longer build the best stock selection strategy. Stock guys need to think about the fixed income world, what's happening in the credit space. Same thing, in credit, they have to worry about what's happening in the equity world. So I think it's really just that's the way markets have moved. Those are the needs, and I think technology has been used to bring them together.
And Don, what are some of the advantages? How has it helped Citizen Financial and all the technology investments that you're doing?
I go back to serving the clients. I'll give you one interesting example. Sure. Before we kind of flip to the engineering orientation, we really had challenges building APIs. Along comes COVID, right? And there was a program people will remember called the Payroll Protection Program, PPP. Yeah. That was administered by the Small Business Administration. We generally did maybe 300 small business loans a quarter with our clients, and basically fill out the application. All of a sudden, every client on the planet wants the payroll protection program. Right. We were able to build an interface in 2 days with the SBA and electronically process 10,000 applications in 3 weeks. And eventually we processed 85,000 applications for $8.5 billion. That would have never happened if we hadn't kind of gone to an engineering type stack. And there were many banks across the country that could not support their clients at the time of need because the cash flows were evaporating. So I just think it enables you to do things. The other thing that we're now seeing similar to what you just said. We're seeing clients ask for things together. So one of the things we're doing at Citizens is we're building a big private bank. We hired about 250 of the old First Republic private bankers. And what their clients want to see is they want to see their personal accounts and their business accounts together on one report. We've never done that before. We had consumer over here and commercial over here. So we would have never been able to do that if we hadn't invested in the technology to do it. So it just allows you to be much more flexible in terms of serving the requirements that the clients are pulling forward. And then, I mentioned the data center thing. There's a huge security and cyber and other protection that goes along with that, which is obviously stability and security is paramount when you're sitting in a big financial institution.
Yeah, and on that, George, how do you deal with that, all the risks associated with it on top of that? How do you stay on top of that?
So, like many organizations, we have cybersecurity officer and a relatively large investment in terms of like people on the ground that are like running the data centers. Of course, for large financial firms, you're running multiple data centers because you need to have failover sites. So, it's not for the faint of heart. It is, there is a lot of manual work that needs to be done, and a lot of it needs to be done on weekends because when you're doing upgrades, a lot of that stuff needs to be done when financial markets are closed. So there's a group of very dedicated people that will go in and do a lot of the security updates over the weekends just because they need to take systems down offline for a period of time.
And we appreciate those.
We do, yes.
We do. So all the talk we've been having about the technology and how fast it seems to be advancing, where do you see it headed? I mean, maybe the question is, what do you want it to do that it's not doing now? Dom, I'll start with you.
I think one of the panels talked a lot about just AI and generative AI and that whole arena, and I agree that the promised land of generative AI is a ways off. But I think using robotics and AI and eventually Gen AI to actually kind of speed up what we can do from a technology stack standpoint and use it to interface with our clients in a more substantial way. So I'll give you another example. We just rolled out something called our digital butler, which is basically it's like Hyatt has. It's customers' ability to self-service on their platform, but we've enabled that with all sorts of technology enhancements and search features, which allow us to actually digitally interface with our clients 90% of the time and solve problems not in 3 days but in 3 minutes. And we have steering mechanisms where you can see keywords that come in and it'll steer it to a specialty department in our operations units to basically get it to the right people's hands if it needs human intervention. So none of that would have been possible if we actually hadn't built the technology stacks the way we have.
Excellent. And George, what are you excited about, looking ahead?
Well, quite honestly, I think as we've heard before, there is a lot of hype around generative AI. I mean, listen, I've been building models for years. AI is another form of modeling. It requires massive amounts of data. I think, I'm excited about the fact that people are now collecting and storing data, right? We weren't doing that for many years. We generated data and it was thrown away because, well, we didn't have enough storage. We couldn't afford to store it. Now people are understanding that data is value. If anything, I would argue that the value is in the data and not in the algorithms. And that's really where the value is. And you've seen this with the various firms going out there and making acquisitions and locking up certain vendors or locking up certain types of data that then they make harder to get. It's harder to get access to, or licensing fees are very high. Think about indices in general, right? As an example of that. So, but I think data is. I mean, we're at the beginning of a very different period of time, just because we're going to have data that we never anticipated we're going to have, whether it's individual users or a whole host of data that's out there.
And finally, in the few minutes we have left, one of the questions a lot of people ask is, how do you get everyone on board? On board here's another upgrade and here we go. And how do you get everyone excited about it and keep everyone's spirits up as we move on?
Well, when you do it successfully, it's a lot easier to do the next one than if you fail the prior time.
True.
So we try to shield. 80% of the people in the company have no idea what we're doing on the technology side. So you want to shield it from the customers, and you want to shield it from, in my case, my bankers and my investment bankers and my product teams, and really have people rally around the delivery. Who are actually impactful on that delivery. So what we've been able to do back on this reorganization and these we call pods, this organization of teams around customer-oriented delivery, is they get really excited because they're working on things which are actually incredibly accretive to the customer experience. And if that happens, then the stickiness of that customer goes up. And the ability to do other things with that customer goes up because their loyalty goes up. So I think as we've broken it down into teams, we've kind of, even within technology, we shield huge parts of technology from the individual thing that we're delivering. And so a lot of dedication and a lot of kind of purpose-driven activity around, I keep using the customer.
That's what
And
it's
if
about.
you're saying to a technologist, you're implicit or complicit in that customer's experience, they haven't thought about that way before. I think in a startup or a real early stage company, that's all they think about. But in a big bank, the technologists were thinking about customer experience, and so it kind of creates a new element to their day, which gets them excited.
Excellent. And we have like about 2 minutes left. What do you think, George? How do you get everyone riled around?
So one of the things I would say culturally is that, I tell my team, if you make a mistake, I'm totally fine with it as long as you don't make the same mistake twice, right? So there's a lot of concern
Like your children.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of concern of like, oh, we were doing this project and we made a mistake along the way and people are nervous. And I'm like, guys, look, I expect there are going to be road bumps. There are going to be lots of problems along the way. There's something you design, even if you think perfectly about planning everything, there's going to be something that comes up that you didn't plan for. And I say, that's fine. I'm very happy. That's life, right? As long as we don't do it again, I think that's a success story. And I'm not looking to, to kind of, go after someone or make it an issue. I think that's just the nature of the process. If you learn something, you take away from it, from my perspective, and even better if you can get the senior members of the team to educate the junior developers or the junior engineers to kind of embrace that. It's the way forward. You have to take a long-term view.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. This has been a pleasure. Another round of applause for that. Thank you.